Welcome to The Devil's Bargain, a gripping tale of a young woman's desperate deal with the devil to save her dying sister. Follow her journey as she discovers that the price of her sister's life may be her own soul, and must outsmart the devil before it's too late. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more exciting content. Chapter 1: The Deal. Maggie sat by her sister's hospital bed, holding her hand as she watched the monitor beep steadily. The cancer had taken hold of her sister's body, and the doctors had given her just a few weeks to live. Maggie was desperate to find a way to save her sister, and in her desperation, she turned to the one option she had left, making a deal with the devil. She had heard the stories of people who had made deals with the devil, and she knew the risks involved. But Maggie was willing to do anything to save her sister. She took a deep breath and closed her eyes. "Devil, I know you're listening," she said, her voice shaking. "I'm willing to make a deal with you. Please, save my sister's life." There was a moment of silence before a deep voice spoke in her mind. "And what will you give me in return?" Maggie hesitated for a moment, knowing that whatever she offered, the devil would demand more. But she didn't have a choice. "Anything," she whispered. There was a sinister chuckle. "Very well. Your sister will live, but you must give me your soul in return." Maggie felt a chill run down her spine. She knew the price was high, but she couldn't let her sister die. "I agree," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. There was a moment of silence before the voice spoke again. "It is done." Maggie opened her eyes and looked at her sister. To her surprise, she saw color returning to her sister's face, and the monitor beeped faster. Tears streamed down her face as she realized that her sister was going to live. Chapter 2: The Price of a Soul. Maggie left the hospital feeling a mix of relief and dread. She had saved her sister's life, but at what cost? She knew she had made a deal with the devil, and she couldn't shake the feeling that he would come to collect his payment. Days turned into weeks, and Maggie's sister continued to improve. The doctors were amazed at the sudden turn of events, and couldn't explain how her condition had improved so drastically. Maggie knew the truth, but she kept it to herself. One night, as Maggie was getting ready for bed, she heard a knock at the door. She opened it to find a man standing on her doorstep. He was tall, with dark hair and piercing eyes. "Can I help you?" Maggie asked, feeling uneasy. "I've come to collect what's mine," the man said, his voice cold and calculated. Maggie knew immediately who he was. "You're the devil," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The man smirked. "You made a deal with me, and now it's time to pay the price." Maggie felt a chill run down her spine. She knew she couldn't outrun the devil, but she wasn't ready to give up her soul. "Please, there must be something else I can give you," she pleaded. The devil shook his head. "No, a deal's a deal. You made the choice, and now you have to live with the consequences." Maggie felt a tear roll down her cheek. She had saved her sister's life, but at what cost? "Fine," she said, defeated. "Take my soul." The devil smiled, and Maggie felt a wave of darkness wash over her. She fell to the ground, feeling her soul being ripped from her body. She screamed in agony as the devil took what was his. As the darkness consumed her, Maggie realized that she had made a terrible mistake. She had saved her sister's life, but she had lost her own in the process. Chapter 3: Unforeseen Consequences. Maggie woke up feeling disoriented. She looked around and realized that she was in a dark room with no windows or doors. She tried to move, but she felt like she was chained to the ground. As her eyes adjusted to the darkness, she saw a figure moving towards her. It was the devil. Well, he said, his voice dripping with amusement. It seems like our deal has taken an interesting turn. Maggie tried to speak, but her throat was dry. She managed to croak out a single word. What? The devil chuckled. Your sister's life was saved, but there were unforeseen consequences. You see, your deal with me caused a ripple effect, and now the balance of the universe has been disrupted. Maggie tried to make sense of what the devil was saying, but it was all too confusing. What does that mean? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The devil smiled. It means that you're stuck here with me for eternity. You see, your soul was a crucial part of the balance, and now that it's gone, the universe can't function properly. Maggie felt a wave of panic wash over her. She had never believed in an afterlife, but now she was facing an eternity of damnation. Please, there must be a way to fix this, she pleaded. The devil shook his head. No, there's nothing you can do. You made your choice, and now you have to live with it. Maggie felt a tear roll down her cheek. She had saved her sister's life, but at what cost? She had never believed in the devil or the afterlife, but now she was facing an eternity of torment. As the devil disappeared into the darkness, Maggie realized that she had made a terrible mistake. She had saved her sister's life, but she had doomed herself in the process. Chapter 4. A Glimmer of Hope. Days turned into weeks, and Maggie felt like she was losing her mind. She was stuck in the dark room with no escape, and she could feel the weight of eternity pressing down on her. She had resigned herself to her fate, but she couldn't help but think of her sister. Had she made the right choice? One day, as Maggie was lost in thought, she saw a glimmer of light in the darkness. She rubbed her eyes, thinking it was a trick of the mind, but the light persisted. As she focused on it, she realized that it was getting brighter. Suddenly, the light exploded, and Maggie felt a rush of energy wash over her. She felt like she was being pulled in all directions, and she closed her eyes, feeling overwhelmed. When she opened her eyes again, she was no longer in the dark room. She was standing in a field of flowers, surrounded by a beautiful landscape. She had never seen anything like it. As she took in her surroundings, she heard a voice behind her. Welcome, Maggie. Maggie turned around to see a woman standing there. She was tall, with long, flowing hair and a warm smile. Who are you? Maggie asked, feeling confused. The woman smiled. I'm an angel, Maggie, and I'm here to tell you that there's still hope. Maggie felt a glimmer of hope ignite within her. Hope? What do you mean? The angel explained that there was still a way to restore the balance of the universe. Maggie had made a selfless sacrifice for her sister, and that had created a ripple effect that had disrupted the balance. But there was a way to fix it. Maggie listened carefully as the angel explained what she needed to do. It was a risky plan, but it was the only way to save herself and restore the balance of the universe. Maggie knew she had to take the chance. She had nothing to lose and everything to gain. Chapter 5. The Plan. Maggie was determined to follow the angel's plan. She knew it was risky, but she had to do everything she could to fix the mistake she had made. The plan involved going back to Earth and finding someone who was willing to make a selfless sacrifice for someone else. That sacrifice would restore the balance of the universe and allow Maggie to go back to her life. It sounded simple enough, but Maggie knew it was easier said than done. She had to find someone who was willing to give up their life for someone else, and that wasn't an easy task. She decided to start with her own community. She went to her local church and spoke with the pastor. She explained her situation, and the pastor was sympathetic, but he didn't know of anyone who would be willing to make such a sacrifice. Maggie didn't give up. She went to local hospitals and spoke with patients and their families. She explained her situation, and while many were sympathetic, no one was willing to make the sacrifice. Days turned into weeks, and Maggie was running out of options. She had exhausted all of her resources, and she was starting to lose hope. One day, as she was walking through a park, she saw a young boy playing with his little sister. The boy was around 10 years old, and he was playing with his sister, who couldn't have been more than 3 or 4 years old. As Maggie watched them, she realized that the boy had a terminal illness. He was dying, and there was nothing anyone could do to save him. Suddenly, it hit her. This was her chance. This boy was willing to make a sacrifice for his sister. He knew he was going to die, but he wanted to make sure his sister would live. Maggie approached the boy and explained her situation. She told him that she could save him, but in exchange, he had to make a sacrifice for someone else. The boy thought about it for a moment, and then he nodded. "I'll do it," he said, looking at his little sister. Maggie knew it was risky, but she had to try. She performed the ritual, and a bright light enveloped the boy. When it faded, Maggie knew that the balance of the universe had been restored. But at what cost? Chapter 6: A New Reality. Maggie felt a rush of energy wash over her as she realized that the balance of the universe had been restored. But she also felt a twinge of guilt. She had used a dying boy to fix her mistake. Was it worth it? She decided to go back to the angel and ask her if it was truly worth it. As she stood in the same field of flowers where she had first met the angel, the woman appeared before her. "Did it work?" Maggie asked, feeling nervous. The angel smiled. "Yes, Maggie. The balance of the universe has been restored." Maggie breathed a sigh of relief. But she couldn't help but feel guilty. "But at what cost?" she asked. The angel looked at her kindly. "It was a selfless sacrifice, Maggie." The boy knew what he was doing. He wanted to save his sister, and he was willing to give up his own life to do it. Maggie felt tears welling up in her eyes. She couldn't believe that the boy had been willing to make such a sacrifice. It was truly selfless. As she thought about it, she realized that she had been given a second chance. She had been given a chance to live her life, and she couldn't waste it. She decided to go back to her sister and make the most of the time they had left together. She wanted to make every moment count. When she arrived back on Earth, she found her sister waiting for her. Her sister was weak and frail, but she had a smile on her face. "Maggie, you're back," her sister said weakly. Maggie hugged her sister tightly, feeling tears streaming down her face. "I'm here, sis. I'm here." For the next few weeks, Maggie spent every moment with her sister. They laughed, cried, and reminisced about their childhood. But one day, her sister took a turn for the worse. Maggie knew that the end was near. As her sister took her last breath, Maggie felt a sense of peace wash over her. She knew that her sister was in a better place, and that she had done everything she could to save her. Maggie realized that life was precious, and that every moment counted. She had been given a second chance, and she was determined to make the most of it. Chapter 7: The Aftermath. After her sister's death, Maggie was devastated. She had lost the only family she had left, and she didn't know how to move on. She decided to take some time off and travel. She wanted to see the world and experience new things. As she traveled, she realized that there was so much beauty in the world. She saw breathtaking landscapes, tasted new foods, and met new people. She also discovered that there was a lot of suffering in the world. She saw poverty, war, and injustice. It made her realize that the world wasn't perfect, and that there was still so much work to be done. As she traveled, she met a man named David. He was kind, funny, and handsome. They hit it off immediately, and they spent the next few months traveling together. David helped Maggie see the world in a new light. He showed her that there was still hope in the world, and that there were good people out there. As they traveled, Maggie realized that she was falling in love with David. It was unexpected, but it felt right. But as their trip came to an end, Maggie knew that she had to make a decision. Should she go back to her old life, or should she stay with David and start a new life? She decided to take a chance and stay with David. They moved in together, and they started a new life. Maggie was happy. She had found love, and she had found a new purpose in life. She started volunteering at a local shelter, and she started making a difference in her community. As she looked back on her journey, she realized that everything had happened for a reason. Her mistake had led her down a path she never would have taken otherwise. It had led her to David, and it had led her to a new purpose in life. She realized that sometimes the unexpected events in life could lead to something beautiful, and that was worth everything. Chapter 8. A Visitor from the Past. Maggie had been living with David for a few months when she received a phone call from her old hometown. It was her childhood friend, Lily. "Maggie, you won't believe who's back in town," Lily said. "Who?" Maggie asked, feeling curious. "Your ex-boyfriend, Jack." Maggie's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't seen Jack in years, not since he had left town to go to college. "What's he doing back?" Maggie asked. "He's working at the hospital. He's a doctor now," Lily said. Maggie felt a strange mix of emotions. Part of her was excited to see Jack again, but another part of her was scared. She didn't know how she would react to seeing him again. After thinking it over, Maggie decided to go back to her hometown to see Jack. She wanted to face her past and see if there was any closure to be had. When she arrived, she went straight to the hospital to find Jack. She saw him in the hallway, and her heart started racing. "Jack," she said, feeling nervous. "Maggie," Jack said, sounding surprised. "What are you doing here?" "I came back to see you," Maggie said, feeling awkward. They talked for a while, catching up on old times. Maggie realized that she still had feelings for Jack, but she didn't know if he felt the same way. As they talked, Maggie realized that Jack had changed. He was no longer the selfish, arrogant boy she had known in high school. He was kind, caring, and passionate about his work. Maggie felt herself falling for Jack all over again. But she didn't know if she was ready to start a new relationship, especially since she was with David. As she left the hospital, she felt conflicted. She didn't know what to do, but she knew that she needed time to think. Chapter 9. A Difficult Choice. Maggie spent the next few days thinking about her feelings for Jack. She knew that she still had feelings for him, but she didn't know if she was ready to leave David for him. She talked to Lily about it, hoping that her friend could offer some advice. "Maggie, you need to think about what you want," Lily said. "Do you want to be with David, or do you want to be with Jack?" "I don't know," Maggie said, feeling confused. "Think about what each of them brings to your life," Lily said. "Think about what you want your future to look like." Maggie thought about it, and she realized that she loved David. He had been there for her when she needed him, and he had shown her a new way of looking at the world. But she also knew that she still had feelings for Jack. He was her first love, and he had a special place in her heart. After days of agonizing over her decision, Maggie finally made up her mind. She decided to stay with David. She knew that it was the right decision. David had shown her a new way of looking at the world, and he had shown her what it meant to be loved unconditionally. She called Jack to tell him her decision. He was disappointed, but he understood. "Maggie, I just want you to be happy," Jack said. "If David makes you happy, then that's all that matters." Maggie felt a sense of relief. She had made the right decision, and she knew that she had a bright future ahead of her. Chapter 10. The Devil's Offer. Maggie thought that her life was finally on track. She was happy with David, and she had a job that she loved. But one day, everything changed. As she was leaving work, she saw a man standing by her car. He was tall and handsome, with piercing green eyes and a charming smile. "Can I help you?" Maggie asked, feeling uneasy. "Actually, I think I can help you," the man said. "My name is Lucian, and I have an offer for you." Maggie felt a chill run down her spine. Something about the man felt off, and she didn't trust him. "What kind of offer?" Maggie asked, feeling wary. "I can give you anything you want," Lucian said, his eyes glinting. "Money, power, fame, you name it." Maggie felt a sense of temptation. She had always wanted more out of life, and the idea of having everything she wanted was too good to resist. "What do I have to do?" Maggie asked, feeling curious. "All you have to do is sign this contract," Lucian said, pulling out a piece of paper. Maggie looked at the paper and saw that it was written in a language she didn't understand. She felt a sense of unease, but didn't know how to react. "What happens if I sign it?" Maggie asked, feeling scared. "You get everything you want, and I get your soul," Lucian said, his smile widening. Maggie felt her heart sink. She realized that she had been talking to the devil, and he was offering her a deal that was too good to be true. "I can't do this," Maggie said, feeling scared. "I don't want anything to do with you." "Suit yourself," Lucian said, shrugging. "But remember, the offer is always on the table." Maggie watched as Lucian walked away, feeling shaken. She realized that the devil was real, and he was out to get her soul. Chapter 11. The Price of Love. Maggie couldn't stop thinking about the devil's offer. She knew that she had made the right decision by not signing the contract, but she couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off. She went to David and told him everything. David listened to her carefully and held her tight. "I'll protect you," David said, his voice reassuring. "I won't let anything happen to you." Maggie felt a sense of relief. She knew that David would do anything to keep her safe. But soon after, Maggie's sister Lily fell ill again. Her condition was worse than before, and the doctor said that she needed a rare and expensive treatment. Maggie didn't know what to do. She couldn't afford the treatment, and she didn't want to ask David for help. That's when she remembered the devil's offer. She knew that signing the contract would be dangerous, but she didn't know what else to do. She went to the park where she had met Lucian before, hoping to find him again. "Lucian, I want to make a deal," Maggie said, feeling desperate. Lucian appeared out of nowhere, his eyes glinting. "I thought you'd come around," Lucian said, his smile widening. "What do you want?" "I want you to save my sister's life," Maggie said, her voice shaking. "And in exchange?" Lucian asked. "In exchange, you can have my soul," Maggie said, feeling a sense of sadness. "Very well," Lucian said, pulling out a piece of paper. "Sign here, and the deal is done." Maggie hesitated for a moment, thinking about what she was giving up. But she knew that her sister's life was more important than her own. She signed the contract, feeling a sense of sadness wash over her. She had just sold her soul to the devil. Chapter 12. A Bargain with the Devil. Maggie went home feeling empty. She knew that she had made a deal with the devil, and she was scared of what would happen next. David noticed that something was wrong and asked Maggie what had happened. She hesitated for a moment, but eventually told him everything. David was shocked. He couldn't believe that Maggie had made a deal with the devil, but he knew that he had to help her. "We have to find a way to outsmart the devil," David said, determined. "There has to be a way to break the contract." Maggie nodded, feeling hopeful. She knew that David would do anything to keep her safe. They started doing research, looking for ways to break a deal with the devil. They read books, talked to experts, and even consulted with a priest. But no matter what they did, they couldn't find a way to break the contract. That's when Lucien appeared again. "Hello, Maggie," Lucien said, his smile widening. "I hope you're enjoying your new life." Maggie felt a sense of anger. She knew that Lucien was playing with her. "I want to renegotiate the contract," Maggie said, her voice steady. "Oh, really?" Lucien said, raising an eyebrow. "And what do you have to offer?" "I have information," Maggie said, feeling confident. "I know something that you want." Lucien looked intrigued. "And what would that be?" Lucien asked. "I know the location of the gates of hell," Maggie said, her voice steady. Lucien's eyes widened. "Interesting," Lucien said, stroking his chin. "And how do I know you're telling the truth?" Maggie pulled out a piece of paper with a map on it. "Here's the location," Maggie said, feeling confident. Lucien looked at the map and nodded. "Very well," Lucien said. "I accept your offer. The contract is null and void." Maggie felt a sense of relief wash over her. She had outsmarted the devil. Chapter 13. The Gates of Hell. Maggie and David were both relieved that they had outsmarted the devil. However, they both knew that they couldn't let their guard down. Maggie had revealed the location of the gates of hell to Lucien, and she knew that he would stop at nothing to get there. She and David decided to go to the gates of hell themselves, hoping to stop Lucien from unleashing evil onto the world. They drove to the location that Maggie had marked on the map, and they found themselves in a dark forest. They could feel an ominous presence surrounding them, and they knew that they were getting close. As they approached the gates of hell, they could hear screams and cries coming from inside. Maggie and David knew that they had to act fast. They could see Lucien standing in front of the gates of hell, a look of determination on his face. "Lucien, stop!" Maggie shouted. Lucien turned to look at them, a smile on his face. "Aw, Maggie, David," Lucien said. "How nice of you to join me." "We can't let you do this," David said, his voice steady. "Oh, but you can't stop me," Lucien said, his smile widening. "I have the power of the devil on my side." Maggie and David knew that they had to act fast. They charged towards Lucien, hoping to catch him off guard. But Lucien was too powerful. He had the strength of the devil, and he used it to push Maggie and David aside. As he approached the gates of hell, he raised his arms, ready to unleash evil onto the world. But then something unexpected happened. Lily appeared out of nowhere, standing in front of Lucien. "Stop!" Lily shouted. "You can't do this." Lucien looked surprised. "Lily?" Lucien said, his voice shaking. "You don't have to do this," Lily said, her voice steady. "You can choose a different path." Lucien looked at Lily for a moment, and then he lowered his arms. "You're right," Lucien said, his voice quiet. "I don't have to do this." And with that, Lucien disappeared, leaving Maggie, David, and Lily alone in front of the gates of hell. Chapter 14. The Aftermath. Maggie, David, and Lily stood in silence, still reeling from what had just happened. They had stopped Lucien from unleashing evil onto the world, but at what cost? "Is he really gone?" David asked, breaking the silence. "I think so," Maggie said, her voice shaking. "But we have to be careful. The devil doesn't give up easily." They all nodded in agreement, knowing that they had to remain vigilant. As they made their way back to the car, Lily spoke up. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "For what?" David asked. "For getting you all into this mess," Lily said. "If I hadn't been sick, none of this would have happened." "Don't be silly," Maggie said, putting a hand on Lily's shoulder. "You didn't do anything wrong. We're all in this together." Lily smiled weakly, grateful for the support of her friends. As they drove back to town, they couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. They had stopped Lucien, but what would happen next? When they arrived back at the hotel, they found a surprise waiting for them. Lucien was sitting in the lobby, looking defeated. "I'm sorry," Lucien said, looking up at them. "I know I've caused a lot of trouble." "Why did you do it?" Maggie asked. "I was desperate," Lucien said. "I didn't know what else to do." "Well, you're lucky we were able to stop you," David said, crossing his arms. "I know," Lucien said. "And I'm grateful. I'll do anything to make it up to you." They all looked at each other, unsure of what to do next. "I think we should hear him out," Lily said, surprising everyone. "I agree," Maggie said, nodding her head. David reluctantly nodded in agreement, knowing that they needed to hear what Lucien had to say. And so, they all sat down together and listened as Lucien explained his story. They could see the regret and remorse in his eyes, and they knew that he had truly changed. In the end, they all agreed to give Lucien a second chance. They knew that it wouldn't be easy, but they were willing to try. As they walked away from the hotel, they couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. They had stopped the devil and had given someone a chance at redemption. Chapter 15. The Final Goodbye. The next day, Maggie, David, and Lily packed their bags and prepared to leave town. They had done what they had come to do, and now it was time to move on. As they loaded the car, they saw Lucien standing outside the hotel, looking at them with a sad expression. "Goodbye, Lucien," Maggie said, walking over to him. "Goodbye," Lucien said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We're giving you a second chance," David said, joining them. "Don't waste it." "I won't," Lucien said, nodding his head. Lily walked over to him and gave him a hug. "Take care of yourself," she said. "I will," Lucien said, his voice cracking. As they got into the car and drove away, they couldn't help but feel a sense of sadness. They had gone through so much together, and now it was over. But they knew that they would always have each other, and that was all that mattered. As they drove down the road, Lily turned on the radio. A song came on that reminded them of their journey together. They all sang along, smiling and laughing. They had saved a life, stopped the devil, and formed a bond that would never be broken. And so, they continued down the road, ready for whatever came next. I know that some of the best story ideas come from you. Feel free to share your story ideas in the comments section below.